What's going on, gardeners? On today's 2-minute garden tip, I'm going to show you the #1 mistake that you shouldn't make when growing asparagus, and it's one that I just made myself. Asparagus is something that pretty much every backyard gardener should be growing. That's because they're super cold hardy, you can squeeze them in practically any spot in your yard, and one crown has a lifespan of 20 years or more. So when you plant the crowns once, they will produce food for you perennially for decades. However, there is one caveat to growing asparagus. And that caveat is that you need to be patient at first. When you plant your asparagus roots, they will start immediately sending asparagus spears up above the soil. And while it will be very tempting to harvest them, you can't. That's because you have to let those asparagus spears turn into the ferns, because it's the ferns that absorb the sunlight and generate photosynthesis, and those sugars have to be sent back to those roots so they grow and they become healthy. So in those initial couple of seasons, you have to delay your harvest and let those roots develop first. So your first season, you will have no harvest, and your second season, you're only allowed to have a very small harvest, except under this one unique circumstance. And that circumstance is if you are going to get hit with a very late freeze. And that's what happened to me. Asparagus are one of the first things in your garden that will break ground. And while the asparagus roots are extremely hardy all the way down to zone 3, the spears themselves are tender to freeze. Because my asparagus roots are only in their second year, I didn't want to touch them and harvest them and save as much energy as possible for the roots. But I got a late freeze and I crossed my fingers and they all got wiped out. Now they're going to have to start all over again. So if you're going to get a late freeze, that is when you actually want to come through and harvest all of your asparagus, because they're going to get killed back anyway, and you're just going to waste food if you don't pick them all. Now look, a late freeze isn't going to harm your asparagus roots at all. They're all going to come back, but it's just a total sin to waste all of that food. I should have just clipped all of the spears and I could have eaten them, since I was going to lose them and be reset anyway. This is the one circumstance when you can break that rule and have a full harvest of your asparagus, because if you're going to lose them all in a late frost or freeze event anyway, you may as well just eat the food. So don't make that mistake that I made. If nature is going to prune your harvest back to the ground for you, you may as well come in there a day early and take it for yourself. And that's today's 2-minute garden tip. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing and hitting the bell to receive new video notifications, and check out our Amazon storefront and spread shop in the video description for a list of the gardening products I use and awesome custom designed apparel and other gear. Your support is greatly appreciated.